Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another Social Blueprint interview. Friends, today, personally, is an incredibly special guest, Esther Malka Groner, because I can truly say EMG, as she likes to be called, and her husband, Mendy, and Mendy, if you're watching this as your better half, have been unbelievably inspirational people to me. And today we're going to talk all about EMG's life, and not only that, how she can relate to people on so many levels. And with that, Esther Malka Groner, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Esther Malka, I know you now, but maybe for people that don't know and everything, take us all the way back to the beginning, because you really have an incredible story, and it all started in Brooklyn, and it all started in a very different style than you are right now. Maybe just talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, correct. So I was born in Brooklyn, New York, more accurately in Williamsburg, New York. So even taking a step back,
Yes.
my mother was born in the city of Satmar, Romania, and my father was born in Hungary. And being of that, they were Satmar Hasidim. For those who don't know what Satmar Hasidim is, you can Google it. But if you watch Unorthodox, that's the Satmar community. And that was my life.
Right.
So not exactly my life, but
Right.
obviously with twists and turns. But that was definitely my community.
Right.
So I grew up, I had a very happy childhood.
Yes.
My parents are wonderful people. I'm the eldest of 7 children. I went to the Satmar. So just to explain a little bit what the Satmar community is.
Yes.
So they're a very insular group. After the Holocaust, it was really important for them to keep the community as similar as it was before the war.
Right.
So they had a lot of rules that they follow. So whether it's they don't read English newspapers, they don't listen to the radio, they speak only Yiddish, they dress in a certain way. So my schooling was obviously similar to that.
Right.
My primary school, actually elementary, which is till year 8. We did have general studies, but very, very basic. We spoke Yiddish with our friends, we dressed a certain way.
Right.
If I look back at my younger self, I had the 2 plaits, and you know, my parents were very much part of that community.
Yes.
Very, important people in the community, like they had a good social status.
Right.
And that was my life then.
Right. And also, I think that sometimes there's a feeling of, when secular people see it, repression. Did you feel any of that?
No, I didn't, because I feel like I said, I had a very happy childhood. I didn't know any better.
Right.
My family is a very functional family, so I didn't, and I must say, like, even the women in my family, because, I didn't have the education that most people have in the world out there, and we weren't exposed to a lot of things, but that didn't make me unhappy.
Yes.
And the women, I must say, are treated, there's a lot of things they can't do, but they're treated by the community, by their spouses, very respectfully.
Right.
Even though their primary role is really to have a large family, be a mother, have immaculate homes. And they do a great job of that with baking and cooking. Some do have education, some do work outside the home, but for the primary years of being a mother, that's their goal. And it's a very respected duty for them.
Understood. But then things changed quite dramatically for you. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah. So I just want to mention one more thing. Like every community or everything, when we look at it from the outside, it seems a certain way, but and that goes for everybody in anything, in any community. You look at and when we get to know people on the inside, like you said, oh, they're different. Oh, they're just like us, because that's the reality. We're all human beings, and we can all relate to each other on one level or another. And that's the same with them. I must add that they are incredible at doing chesed. They have amazing organizations. My grandmother, after the Holocaust, started organization called Bikur Cholim, and now if you have so besides visiting the sick, which they also have, like in most hospitals in New York, for example, they actually have rooms filled with fresh food and bagels and hot food lunches and dinners, and it's actually incredible for all the patients that visit and all the patients that are in hospital. So they do an incredible amount of community work.
And very community focused.
Correct. Mostly for their own community.
Right.
But if anybody wants that help, they would easily be able to access it.
Right. And I assume that the feeling of connection in the community must be huge.
Absolutely. And that's, it's very strong, very insular, and very binding at the same time. So to leave that community, there's a lot at stake. They get married at a very young age.
Yes.
By the time they're 21, they might have 3 children. So if they start thinking differently, or wanting to be something else, or questioning, it's really hard to leave. They wouldn't be allowed to stay in the community. Their family would face a lot of shame. So even if you would want to or have questions, it's easier just to stay and be who you are, because to leave is actually very hard.
Which is exactly what happened.
That's right. So my father's an intellect. I don't think he likes people that much, but he loves his books.
He loves Sefarim.
He loves Sefarim. He loves his books. I think COVID was fantastic for him. It was almost made for him because he was happy in his little study. So he did a lot of studying of all different kind of books, because he didn't find depth and fulfillment with what he had in that community.
Right.
So he started branching out and studying, and one of the things he started studying was the Tanya, the first Chabad book written by the first Chabad Rebbe, which is very deep, and I mean, you study that. You want to tell us a bit about it?
Tanya is, for those of you that don't know, it's more about the mystical or inner meaning of Torah, and much more on a spiritual level than a halakhic level.
Correct. That's right. It talks about the soul and God and the Torah and the connections. It's quite deep.
Yes.
Yeah. So he started studying, but obviously he was being a Satmar Chassid. He didn't have access to non-Satmar people because, as we said, they're very insular. But he was spending a summer in New Hampshire. For those who don't know, it's
northeastern.
On the East Coast.
Yes.
For us Americans, up there somewhere. And he met a Chabad Chassid.
Okay.
And he asked him some questions, and subsequently he put him together with one of the greatest, deepest Chabad scholars, and he started studying a bit more in depth, and he was in heaven.
Wow.
So the issue wasn't that he was studying. I mean, it was. But it was because he had students, and he secretly started teaching them all this. He was so in heaven. He had to share it.
Right.
So once
he felt enlightened.
He felt the depth, he felt the joy, and he absolutely loved it. Once he's done that, there's no turning back.
Right.
And, secret is when one person knows. The secret leaked out, and we were excommunicated eventually. We had to move from one place to the other, and eventually we ended up in Israel.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, how did you feel personally? Because it was, in some ways, it wasn't a decision that you made. It was a decision that your parents made.
Correct. Yeah.
And so how did you handle it? Because, and I'm going to tie it in later on, because I think that you're one of the most balanced people I know. But just how did you handle it?
I don't know if everyone would agree with that.
Okay.
Ask my kids, and well, maybe they won't.
I'm just curious, how did you handle that?
Yeah. So, I was 12 when I started hearing about things, and ultimately probably 14, 15 when I fully became Chabad. My father was, it was very scary in the beginning, to me, it was seriously felt like my parents are leaving the fold.
Yeah.
Chabad was extremely foreign to us. The philosophies on opposite poles, really. Satmar is very insular, Chabad is very out there.
Yes.
So it was very scary, especially for a young teenager.
That's what I mean, exactly.
Yeah, and I eventually lost all my friends. We did have a reunion many years later, which I'll come back to it, but I lost all my friends. We lost all our family, really. So we actually essentially lost everything. But at the same time, my father was very smart about it because he didn't just tell us how to be and what to be. He shared the joy. So he explained to us. He got us a teacher. So we got to see for ourselves the depth of what it has to offer. So once you see that, you want to be part of it. You want to have a Judaism that is full of joy and full of life and full of love and a non-judgmental approach to Judaism. So it's human nature. Obviously, you're going to be, to be just told what to do. That's how I grew up. And if you don't do that, you get to be punished.
Right.
It's not a pleasant thing. So it was very enticing. It was actually a beautiful way to live life. So it was almost, as much as it wasn't my choice, I felt like it's worth it.
I was just going to say, yes. And that was the offset to clearly when friends that used to be your best friends all of a sudden won't talk to you in a classroom. There's the other side of that is that you felt like you were really learning how to live, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, even as a young teenager, it was very enlightening for me. It was like, oh wow, this is really beautiful. So it was more kind of like a positive twist on everything. And also like for us, us, a Jew was someone who dressed like me and looked like me. And that was considered a good Jew. But once we came to Chabad, it was like, a Jew, there's no such a thing as a good Jew or a bad Jew. A Jew is part of, any Jew is just as great as Moses. Because a Jew has a soul that's a godly soul that's part of Hashem. And therefore, what he does is irrelevant to the soul. What he does is between him and God. Or her and God. So it's such a beautiful way to look at things. It's exciting. It's wonderful. It has passion, so it's worth it.
Yeah, and and I'll come back to it, but also even today, I notice how I've known you for many, many years. I could absolutely say, hand on heart, you really are non-judgmental. Do you think that coming from that background where you've seen a lot of different ways to live, has it helped you, fast forward, to, plus 30 years?
I think so. Look, in general, Chabad has a non-judgmental approach.
Right.
And that's our way of thinking. But having said that, there are personalities within every community. So as much as I say that, it's human nature. So the philosophy can be one thing, and then you get someone that, is critical because that's how they are as human beings. So I actually think it had a profound influence on me because we were judged by not knowing who we are and what Chabad is. We were very much judged and excommunicated. And when I look at someone, it's irrelevant of who they are. That's between them and God. Yeah. Like it's not my business. And therefore, I love people.
Yes.
So
it's obvious.
So for me, if I meet them, there's so much to learn and so much to gain, and it's just it's a wonderful part of human nature. I really wasn't coping during COVID. It's the community and the people, and I do think that it had an influence on me because I knew what it felt, and I have the same approach with my children as well.
Right.
Because my children, most of them are adults. 12-year-old thinks he's an adult, but he's not really an adult. And they've all, have amazing, incredible lives, and they're adults, and I'm so proud of them. everyone has chosen their own lifestyle.
Yes.
And we're just there, Mendy and I are just there to support them, to be there for them, to love them. But judging them is not for us. We got to embrace them for who they are and whatever lifestyle they chose, regardless, because they're us. They're our soul. So I just feel a lot of times, we live in a very non-judgmental environment in theory.
Right.
But in reality, it's not like that. People who have, let's say, children with physical disability,
right,
they won't be judgmental in that area, but they can be extremely judgmental when it comes to mental and emotional well-being of another person, because they're not familiar with that. And like I said to you before, it's like, many people think if you do A and B, you get C. But
right.
we all know that, we all have this perfect life ahead of us. And when it comes to real life, it's not like that. So many things play a role, whether it's personality, whether it's friends, or if society, or
right.
nature and nurture. So it's like, so the trick is to be non-judgmental in general, because being judgmental in what you're so familiar with,
right,
that's not called being non-judgmental. It's tricky, but it means that non-judgmental means full stop. Everybody has I'm not judgmental, but
right.
Life has to be without a but, because we all want to have this perfect spouse and this perfect child. We'll just, like a clock, we'll do a bit fast forward,
right.
a bit minor.
Right.
We'll just, like measure them out and be perfect. That's not real life. So non-judgmental approach means whatever it is, and you're just there to support it.
And, what is interesting is, we were talking about it, is that your children are still very close, even though physically you are very far away. I think that a number of them live in the United States right now. They still have their bond, don't they?
Oh, they're within themselves. Oh, they're amazing. And that's just like, they just love each other. And I just hope they continue. And I know they're fine without us being there. And so many of them live overseas.
Yes.
Which is amazing for them.
How do you deal with it?
Amazing for us that we raised them to be independent, and we gave them an American passport.
Right.
Which maybe that was the mistake. But at the same time, you did the same. So
yes.
Watch and see. But at the same time, I'm proud of them. I'm proud of what they did. People always ask, are you eventually going to move to America?
Yes.
I love my life here. I love my kids to bits. In the ideal world,
right,
I'd like to do a bit of both, maybe.
Sure.
In the ideal world, but I'll never retire, so I don't know when the ideal world. Maybe one day we'll do,
right,
a month and a half there, and then twice a year. Who knows? But we're never going to retire, so I'm not sure when that's going to happen.
No, and you're so integral to this community here. How do you balance out, though, being so into people's lives on the outside, but also having your own family? Because I think that a lot of people forget that it's a real push-pull for people like you, isn't it?
It is, and I think when you love what you do, you manage to balance it.
Right.
Because I never wanted to be on the expense of my children, no matter what. So we do have to make choices, and but at the same time, we love what we do. So if you love what you do, it just becomes, you just manage. You just play the game right, and not play the game right, it's not the right word, but juggle it, because it's, my house is not perfect though.
Right. No.
So, I let go of things that are not that important. If my laundry's not folded perfectly, big deal. I'm not in Satmar anymore.
Right.
I don't have to have perfect laundry. That's why I left the community. I'm here doing things that are, more meaningful perhaps, and it doesn't really matter.
Right.
So.
And, one of the things that's incredible about you, I'm going to tell you a story about, is your ability to go with the flow. And I'm going to tell you a story. I don't know if you even remember it. I don't know if it was last year or a couple of years ago. You're going to have a party at the Chabad house, and the entertainment cancels like 2 hours beforehand or something of that nature.
I think they didn't show up.
Or they didn't show up.
They didn't even bother canceling.
Okay, even worse. But you just went with it. You did not get into a panic or anything like that. Do you think that that's a teachable skill, or I don't know if you even remember precisely?
I'll tell you the truth. I only remember because you reminded me. I didn't remember that it happened because I'm sure it happened more than once.
Definitely.
We always try to have plan B. I think it's a little bit of a combination of, not being a worked up kind of nature.
Right.
But I definitely think it's something that that some people need to work on it, because it's not as easy maybe than for other people. But, it's like, do as I say, not what I do. So
right.
What's the point? You get all worked up, you get angry, and then, I had no idea that you were watching me. Imagine if I was losing the plot and she goes, oh, there she goes. So, you only told me afterwards, like, oh, he's watching me. Like, I didn't know that. So, yeah.
And, and you mentioned before about, being happy with what you do. And I know you don't like this question about, success. What is success? We're all trying to find out what is success in the definition. But I remember you also telling me another point about feeling...
I'm going to be careful what I tell him.
I have a good memory. Is feeling so fulfilled with what you do. And I remember literally coming home to Sharon and saying to her, if that isn't the definition of success, I don't know what is. How do you find that kind of fulfillment? Because people are really in search of it.
I think success is a very big word, and by today's day and age, measured by social media.
Yeah.
Very often, and me included, get caught up in this one does this and this one does that, and we all know that it's not necessarily the true world. It's the 1 second that you have an amazing moment on holidays, and that gets put on social media, and we all know that. That's right. So success is very, we have to maybe reassess what success is, and if you touch someone's lives and they touch your lives, that is success. Success is not only on a global and what other people can measure. Success is really, let's get real.
Yes.
That is what success is. Success is that you woke up this morning, you made a difference somewhere, often not even knowing.
Yeah.
Very often not even knowing. I had no idea that you were impressed by my non-reaction.
Yes.
For the entertainment
I was stunned.
Out. Yes.
I was stunned. Yeah.
So there you go. So that's success. So why success is measured perhaps by the wrong mediums,
yes,
rather than what's real, because often we have impact on people. Sometimes we know about it, but very often we have no idea, and people will come back years later and say, this and this happened, and so that's what
and how do you balance this? Because like, we're all human beings, as you say, we're all made in Hashem's image, and we all have these desires that, yes, we want to make a difference, but I also want to drive a nice car, have a nice vacation, eat the best food. How do you balance, and I'm sure you're the same, how do you balance out those two kind of conflicting emotions?
Have you seen my car? It's all banged up. I blame my teenagers, but it's all my fault.
Okay.
Apparently I'm a terrible driver. But it is a, and everybody has to know themselves,
right,
and know what, but I'm not going to say I don't value material things.
No,
I do value
everybody
material
does.
Things. Everybody does.
That's what I mean.
But there's so many people that value material things, and you'd never know that about them, because they do so many good things,
right,
and they're never flashy, and they're just really good people. So I guess it's a balance, everybody on their level. I mean, we have large families,
yes,
and the truth is that our kids don't get their own car, and our kids don't get their own home, because, we can't afford it. And that's okay. I think that's actually a gift that we're giving our children, that they have to get from it to it by themselves. And what's wrong with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of children, obviously, it takes two. And tell us a little bit about Mendy, if you're watching. I want to hear the story. How did you meet, and what was that like?
Okay, so I know people think that religious people meet like fiddler on the roof, arranged marriages. And it's like, they get forced to get married to each other. Well, it wasn't like that at all.
Okay.
So, funnily enough, a lot of people do get married with arranged marriage, meaning someone introduces the two people.
Sure.
And that's what happened with us.
Okay.
I was living in Israel because when I was 15, my family moved to Israel, and that's where I finished high school and my teaching degree, and I learned Hebrew because I moved there not knowing a word of Hebrew besides Shalom Abba Ima. So I learned, anyway, so I was living in Israel, and my brother, Mendy was in New York at the time.
Okay.
He's Australian, but he was, at the time in New York. And my brother spent a summer with him, and he thought it was a great idea for me to come and meet him.
Interesting.
So I came to New York to meet him, but officially he wasn't dating yet, which was not true. But he didn't want to go out with me because in his mind, I was this nerdy Satmar girl that doesn't speak English. So he just kept pushing back and saying, forget it. And, he went out, I went out with other people.
Right.
And then he finally gave up and goes, fine, I'll go out with her. And we went out for, not for months on end. We went out, but don't forget, when we go out, we already know a lot about the person beforehand. Right. So we go out for the purpose of marriage.
Right.
Do we have chemistry? Do we have the same goals? Do we click? Rather than, starting from scratch and just having fun. So before I went out with Mendy, I knew quite a bit about him.
Right.
So when we went out, we just have to see if we actually like each other. And yes, we're allowed to say no. It's not like anybody
I think that's a
massive
point for people to understand.
Yeah. I mean, my kids obviously have gone out with people for quite a bit of time and said no to them.
You mentioned a story about how, you met overseas and this and that, and you try to figure things out. Is it a lot easier today with internet stalking?
Yes. So, first thing when, you hear about a name, you check them out on Facebook and, and one of the shidduch tips that people get is like, only put up good photos. Because you never know. Because you never know. The future mother-in-law might check you out. Don't put up the photo with the beanie and the, schlock kind of look.
Right.
So it's a lot easier. Yes. Well, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but absolutely, it's a lot of internet stalking.
But you and Mendy obviously clicked, and then coming to Australia, was that a huge jump for you at that point?
I remember my father-in-law said to me, come to Australia, come check it out. Try it out, see if you like it. And I said to him, yes, good salesman. And I said to him, if I'm going to try it out, I'll find fault. But if I come, I like it.
Interesting.
So that's what we did. We liked it. We got direction from the Rebbe. We asked the Rebbe a few choices, and we came. We obviously Mendy's Australian. His father really, really wanted him to come. I'm not sure if he wanted or I wanted even, but we kind of weighed up our options and we thought, you know what, let's go, let's give it a go.
Right.
And I'm not an Australian citizen yet. 30 years later, I'm still a permanent resident, you too.
Same, yes.
We often say we should go.
I know, we should do it together.
We should go together. But Australia's home, no question.
Yes.
Absolutely love it here. And one day we'll become citizens together.
Absolutely. EMG, you really have had such, an impact. I cannot even explain it to people that don't know who you are, and I hope that they do after this video here. Just the ability to kind of what I call live high and live low, meaning that you're obviously going for a bigger purpose in life, but at the same time, you're happy to talk to anybody about anything. You do like to talk.
Yeah, I do like I do like to talk. Yeah, I do about anything. Well, we're all humans, and we all live normal lives as well. I'll never forget And we get that actually quite often, that when we invite people for Shabbat,
Yes.
the most common comment we get is like, "Oh, you're normal."
Yes.
So
I must say that was that was our reaction as well, because we've been there a few times.
So we can talk about anything and everything. We don't just stick to Torah talk. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hey, we want to keep it at least somewhat short. In closing, can you just maybe touch again about non-judgmental and not understanding always people's backgrounds? Can you just maybe close with something more about that?
You're going to make me emotional. I just think it's just so many people, with our own kids and with our people around us, we always have a but.
Right.
Always. And there should be no buts. And we should, just because we understand mental health, we should try to understand emotional health or physical health. That's, there's emotional, mental, physical,
right,
spiritual. There's so many aspects in life. And, my job, as much as everybody else's job, is to try to understand a little bit about their life. And if I don't, not go back to the mindset I probably had when I started having a family, is like, oh, I'm going to do this and this, and of course I'm going to get like the perfect result that I'm imagining. It's not like that. So it's a humbling feeling that as we grow older, we have maybe less patience in life, but at the same time, we're humbled by what we see around us.
Yes.
And perhaps we watch more than we judge.
Absolutely. Everyone, that is a great message to close with. We'll put links to Chabad Glen Eira for sure into the video. Thank you so much for joining us.